This next individual is a bit of a legend in the industry. So actually, just after graduation, Alex Brown, who's now the sales director at SaaS Growth and Sales Confidence, originally set up a chain of tattoo parlors. So this is a business owner that then exited that business. He went from there, and then it was running 20,000 plus attendee trade shows, hundreds of sponsors for a company called Prism down in Bristol. And then he recently moved to doing exec engagements for a company called GDS. About 6 months ago, I get a call. Who is it? Alex at the end of the phone. He had me at hello, as they say. This is a man that loves the cold call, or as we call it at Sales Confidence, the warm call. Because there is no such thing as a cold call if the person at the end of the phone is breathing. Really looking forward to Alex sharing wisdom over the next 7 minutes. Please do ask questions in the chat. Will, Tom, Ed, thank you for the shout out.
Thank you, James. Okay, so I did have a chat with James originally on what I was going to do my talk on. And I think it was universally agreed that me banging on about using the phone on every talk track I do was getting a bit old. So I'm going to take a new approach. I do recommend you get on the phone as your 101. But I'm going to share a little story about an early job I had as an individual contributor, and some of the takeaways I learned the hard way through maybe not having access to my peers' guidance, a little bit of mentorship to guide me through and help me. So I started out many years ago in an individual contributor role. I was selling educational books for children. It was a commission-only role, so if I didn't sell, I didn't eat. So I was introduced to my sales manager, who was probably a stereotypical sales manager from a couple of decades ago. A bit of a belly, chain smoked 30 cigarettes a day, arguably drove a car that was a little bit out of his price range, and a bit of a chauvinist maybe to boot. So my training for the company consisted of the features and finer points of these educational books. And then I got the opportunity to shadow my sales manager, where we smoothed prospects. We almost exclusively directed our pitch at the father, the dad of the situation. And we talked about things like how wonderful their car was and tried to get dad excited and engaged in the conversation. So as a young man, while all of my friends were going to chase girls and boys and going out for beers, I was getting suited and booted and hitting the road to sell my educational books. So unsurprisingly, the deals weren't coming in thick and fast. I wasn't closing any deals. That was a problem being a commission-only role. I had to find a new process and quick. So I learned some key lessons on this journey. And I think they're still very relevant today. And a number of them are extremely relevant at the moment. So during sort of exploring and on the journey of learning my new process, I come to a quick revelation that actually 9 times out of 10, when selling educational books to parents for their children, the DM, the decision maker, is actually mum. And, you know, smoozing about how wonderful the car was with a big engine and similar was definitely not the answer. So that was a bit of a revolutionized my approach, essentially. And I had a bit of clarity on who was driving the decision, and if mum got the value and you know, saw the value in the books, then it generally drive the sale. Dad was certainly an influencer, but mum was the decision maker. So as I said, that revolutionized my approach, and I think it's really pertinent at the moment, because I think a lot of us are finding that the decisions are going through certainly more influencers or decision makers, but equally we're having a lot more of a challenge for the likes of the CFO as an example. So that revolutionized my process. And The second thing that I learned on my exploration of understanding how to sell these books was actually the features of the book that I'd been taught were really boring. I'd lose prospects on that journey. So the finer points of Key Stage 3 weren't the most exciting topic to discuss. So I learned really quickly that actually I needed to stick in value. And in this situation, value was combining their child, their loved one, with the book. How did the child look after they'd been combined with the book? What was the outcome of them giving the child the book? That's what I needed to talk about. That was value. Mum and dad were invested in that conversation. They would talk about it for days. So I learned very quickly to move away from features and similar and actually talk about the outcome of working with me, and equally working with a company that was obviously selling the books. So, you know, how would that accelerate their child? And the reason that's obviously really pertinent today is we're all being scrutinized a lot more as salespeople about, you know, where the ROI is, what the outcome, what does it look like to be working with us at the moment? And ROI is a big topic. So I've carried that with me to today. The last thing that I learned on my initial IC journey was that actually it didn't matter whatsoever at what level of academic intelligence the child was. It just didn't matter. It didn't come into it. It didn't matter if they were borderline genius or actually they were thick as it turns out that the decision makers, the parents, wanted exactly the same outcome if they were either end of the spectrum. So they wanted their child to do better. Whether he was bottom of the class or top of the class, they wanted him to make that incremental improvement. So I think that applies really well to today. And, you know, we're all wondering whether we should be reaching out to prospects and similar. But if you've genuinely got something valuable that can help to accelerate a prospect in some way, it doesn't matter what, you know, where they are currently, it's worthwhile having that conversation. And, you know, if you think you can add value anywhere, my advice would be to reach out and start that conversation. So a little bit of a different track from me, but just some of the learnings I had on my initial IC journey, and some learnings that I've carried with me that I think at the moment are extremely pertinent to anyone in an IC role.
Alex, thank you for sharing, and some great stories. It's funny, that it does remind me of my first sales role. It was a commission only door-to-door role, persuading people to get their milk delivered. So you can imagine knocking on someone's door who in their weekly or daily shop goes to Tesco's, Waitrose, Asda, persuading them that they should get it delivered. And actually it was the benefits to the local community versus the fact it was milk. And so thinking about what we all sell today is software solutions. You know, I love that focused on the outcome. What value is this going to add? And I would ask this, and you have to ask yourself this question. If you don't believe your solution adds value to the people you're pitching, find another company to work for. Because it's unconscious and you will be smelt out by your prospect. So great chat. Thank you, Alex. We'll invite you back for questions at the end.